Welcome back to The Rancher's Voice, the podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the pulse of today's industry. From policy changes to leadership stories in the Western lifestyle, The Rancher's Voice dives into the stories that matter most to ag producers.
Welcome back to The Rancher's Voice. This is Raylee Honeycutt, and today I am joined by MSGA's first Vice President, Turk Stovall. Good morning, Turk.
Yeah, good morning.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Today we're kind of talking about something that has been a continual conversation for us over the past year with our producer profitability, but you just returned from kind of a historic and one-of-a-kind event called the Common Ground Summit. Um, can you give us your quick elevator speech on what the Common Ground Summit was?
Well, just it's easy. I mean, it was an effort to take producers from across the country and bring them together and to see what topics can we really come together, seek consensus, and really move some topics forward that are significant, really for the future of the livestock industry.
Great. And that was held right after Easter in Denver, and a group of 40 folks. Was it 40?
It was.
40 people flew into Denver, and you guys spent a couple days together talking about some of those areas where folks could potentially find consensus. Um, let's talk a little bit about before the event even started. You were kind of the chair of the committee. Can you give us a little background on some of the conversations that happened and how we really got to bringing that group of 40 people into Denver?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, there's quite a bit of history behind the summit of how we got to where we were last week. And you know if you've ever had any involvement with the livestock industry, there's many different organizations, and there's many different opinions of what we need to focus on as an industry to help our producers and really help our livestock industry move forward. Now, with all of that said, we've had controversial topics to where it doesn't seem like we can get some consensus. And so, with efforts, really a lot from Montana Stockgrowers, policy was brought forward at the Montana Stockgrowers Annual Convention, really saying, you know what, we need to unify as an industry, and we need to really get down to the topics that really matter to keeping these operations going and the next generations coming back, which then led into the Producer Profitability Initiative Montana Stockgrowers head up through its state. But it really, it was really a moment where a lot of different states started saying, man, we really need to listen to what our producers need. And we really just need to quit fighting amongst ourselves and get down to what are the topics that really make a difference, just to sometimes actually to survive, stay alive, and then ultimately we want to have businesses that attract the next generation to come. So with all that said, there was been efforts over the I want to say it was probably 2 years ago, there was an effort to bring organizations together, kind of as an industry roundtable. And I would almost say that was probably our the first attempt to try to get some consensus. And you know, it's grown from there, and it's grown from the standpoint as an industry said, my goodness, we really need to come together and unify and bring up some topics that we all can agree, saying, yep, absolutely, these are the ones that are the most important. Because what we've learned is, you know what, we all love this industry. We really all share the same passion for the industry to be successful. And and so with all of that said, that was really the foundation of the summit, of years of really trying to come forward with topics. Um, and I'd have to say, Ray Lee, the Montana Stock Growers effort these past couple of years, um, really bringing producers together to having some frank discussions, really helped lay down some groundwork of what can be a successful dialogue. And so that is how the summit was put together. I was asked to moderate and was involved in organizing the summit, and that is really how everybody really came together. And it was really with this idea in mind of there's a lot of topics out there we can all talk about, but what topics as an industry across all sectors, all regions of the country, can we come together and say, yes, you know what, that is really important. We all really do agree that that's very important and we need to move that forward. And that was really the heart of the Common Ground Summit.
That's great. And what's really impressive is that you guys were really able to bring forward some of the leaders within the cattle industry from all different aspects. Like if you look at the attendee list, we have, you know, uh Justin Tupper from, US Cattlemen's, but we also have NCBA representatives as well with Gene Copenhaver. Um how did you guys as the planning committee kind of create the invite list and also make sure that those coming to Denver were, open to finding compromise, open to moving forward solutions?
There's just really a lot of great leaders across our country. It's a big country. And I would say these individuals that were invited to the summit were individuals that I would say just for sure are extremely active today, either as individuals or in organizations, really trying to make a difference. And so it was a clear effort to try to get broad representation across our country, across all sectors. And this meeting was really about producers, and it was about the producers that were involved in other organizations. But that was also um, a real focus to make that this meeting wasn't about organizations. It was really about producers, and it was really about the livelihoods um, of really making a living in the livestock industry. And it was really about just really boiling it down to what do we need to do to attract young and emerging producers into our industry, and what are those barriers. What are the barriers to keep our businesses going far into the future. And so the producers that came forward um were definitely very active. At some point in their in recent time. And so that's what made it successful, to be honest with you. I mean, there's the people that they were there were very professional, and they were very knowledgeable on many levels, from you know calving out cattle out in the range to Washington D.C. and that's where we got into some extremely frank discussions. And the people that were there are the ones that really made this successful.
That's great. I really like what you said about, that they all cared. And I think that's sometimes lost on us when we start looking at policy books or things like that. Sometimes we forget the human component of it, that everybody just cares and really wants to advance and move the industries forward. It just may look different for different people. So really great that we were able to, or you guys were able to kind of come together. So let's talk about that a little bit. So you guys show up in Denver. What does the schedule, what does the event look like? How did it really kick off so that folks really felt like they were in a place where it was open and transparent and you could have those kind of frank conversations?
Well, we first started out with kind of some homework assignments. All the attendees were sent surveys, and at the most important thing about this summit was we wanted to create an environment that there's trust, and there's transparency, and we wanted to really be able to get down to topics that really mattered today, like right now. And so we really focused on all types of vehicles and communication channels for all of the participants to be able to, um, write. Like if you could give a message to your um, industry comrades, what would it be? What would you have to say to them? And they all had an opportunity to do that on their own time and bring that forward. And so with all that said, we really laid the focus is there's a lot of topics out there we can talk about. But to try to get them all addressed to the time they need in a matter of days is impossible. So if we could just say, what topics can we really talk about in the given time that we're going to meet and get something done? What are they? And so that was those are some homework assignments. And then as people flew in on Monday, we had a welcome reception, and um, and I gave some comments that night, and those comments were about, this is our chance to do something different. This is our chance to be able to look forward for our industry instead of look backwards of, what, we didn't talk about the topics that I wanted to talk about. Or, I see a guy across the room there or a gal across the room there that I just I don't agree with maybe their organization, or maybe I don't agree with their opinion, or I don't agree with the topics they think is most important. But from that point forward, I wanted to make sure that all of our participants, we're not here to fight. We're not here to try to sway each other's um, thoughts on, you know, if they just had this information, I could change their mind. That wasn't the point of the summit. The point of the summit is to realize that we are all producers and we all love this industry. We have way more in common than not. And so, we all share these passions for our industry to make it successful. And that really was the fiber of the summit. And it really laid the groundwork to where this just is not about arguing. This isn't about uh, me trying to change your mind. This isn't about me saying, you know what, my organization is better than yours. This was really about what can we all come together on and make a difference on. And there's several different examples of, when we go to Washington D.C. and we meet with our elected officials, they really do want to know what we need. They really do want to, they see the importance of our industry to our country. But what's complicated is if they meet with one cattleman's group and one cattleman's group says that this is the most important, and then the next one that comes through the door, they might say, no, that cattleman's group doesn't know what to talk about. This is the most important one. And it's tough for those elected officials to probably decipher an industry that unfortunately just can't see some common ground sometimes. And so, that was really our focus.
So looking at the topics that rolled out post event, a lot of them mirror or look very familiar to some of the things that we heard from our listening sessions when we did the producer profitability initiative, which is great, right? Like it kind of almost validates that what we heard on the ground across the state of Montana resonates and is true across the state borders and across the country. So, one question that I've heard and folks may be interested in is Was this 100% consensus building? How were people able to kind of vote on the topics, or how did the group narrow down their topics to these key points?
So we identified these topic areas from Montana's producer profitability sessions, but also LMA held working groups um, across the country. And then there were some others, there's some other states that, that did similar things. And, I would say for, those topic areas that carried really big weight, consistent across all of those working sessions. And so we utilize those as, all right, let's look at those topics and let's drill those down a little bit. And so we broke everybody up into 4 working groups, and then we really took a deep dive on taxes. We took a deep dive on labor and transportation, and we really talked about how do we get these young people thinking that our industry is a great industry to make a living in. And if maybe you were in some other industry and you woke up one day, you said, "Hey, I want to be a farmer and I want to be a rancher." I mean, is that even possible? And the overlying one is we talked a lot about risk. All cattlemen and farmers know that we have a lot of risk in our business, and we can do everything right, and it can be devastated in a blink of an eye. And what tools do we need to do to keep us in business? But when you really get granular, what risk tools do we need out there to get a loan? That's those are the operational things that we really talked about. Just living the business. And so then those working groups reported back to when we all came back together, and each group talked about the topics that they talked about, and then they talked about, of all the things we talked about, these are the points that we feel like we can come to consensus on, where we think the industry can find common ground. And then we open it up for discussion. And in the governance of the summit is, we're looking for a unanimous agreement. And we had great discussion. We had great healthy debate. And we didn't always have 100% consensus. And so I would move it back to discussion, or we needed to relook at our what we've done, and how are we going to move it forward with 100% consensus. And so that was how we governed it. And so what you see is a summary. That group, every one of them voted to move it forward. It only took one vote to stop it. And there was scenarios when that happened. And where you have the whole assembly voting yes, and one producer says, "I don't agree. I'm uncomfortable with this." And it stopped right there. And we moved it back to discussion to find consensus. And that was it was a pretty powerful uh, work session. And
Yeah.
and to get to where the summaries that we have here, there was a lot of thought that went into that. And there's no doubt, you talk to any one of those participants, we were all on the same page when we adjourned.
That's so impressive too, because if you look over the summary and just the key highlights were, topics are achieving and maintaining ag-friendly tax policy, making risk management tools more effective, improving access to labor, increasing flexibility for livestock haulers, and creating support for young and emerging livestock producers. If you really look at those buckets, that is a large amount of topics that we agree upon. Again, so I think that this is such an exciting time and such a great success coming out of this Common Ground Summit, because those topics encompass so much that we can work on and collaborate on as a cattle industry.
Absolutely. I think we need to try to discipline ourselves to look for the greater good. We all need to find forgiveness, and we all need to say, "Hey, we are going to all disagree, and that on certain things, and that's really okay." But that doesn't mean we can't work together to move other topics forward. And I think we just really need to focus on that philosophy as an industry and as a country. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean the other ideas they have are bad. And we really need to do a better job of that. All of us with organizations is, you know, if I win, that can't be at the loss of someone else. And because we all are part of the industry, we all need to win, and our industry needs to win. And that was really the feeling throughout those days. And when you can get to that point, you really can get a lot done for our industry, our kids, and our country. And
Uh,
hopefully we gave a good example for others to take some of those same philosophies. And it's a big country. It's a really big country. And um hopefully this can start other great discussions.
Absolutely. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Montana actually had 3 representatives as part of this, Common Ground Summit. In addition to you, Turk, Montana had Colt Coffee out of Miles City as well as Fred Wacker out of Miles City. They're representing Montana as well. So the summit wraps up. You guys have all agreed upon these topics. Was there a challenge or a next step that these participants were kind of asked to do as they went back home across the country and now probably need to share or have been asked to share this message or the results of this summit?
Yeah, so really the next steps is to go back and talk with our neighbors and talk with our local cattlemen's groups or egg groups. And this is really about the grassroots producers across the country. And you know m- most people are involved in some organization, and the ones that they were excited to be able to share what was done and how it was done with their organizations. We have some producers that already have very large producer followings, from social media or just uh, newsletters. And so they were going to utilize their networks. Um, Almost everybody at that table was also going to visit with their congressional delegation, um, their state delegation. Uh, and so the point was to share a moment in time where the livestock industry could find consensus on some key topics. And hopefully it can be a roadmap that, hey, these topic areas are essential to our industry and the people involved. And hopefully we also provided a roadmap, excuse me, that what we really all can come together. You know, it when you're in egg production, there's many, many different organizations, and all of those can really come together. And I know everyone has a policy book, and everyone wants to show, hey, I brought this win to the industry. But at some point, we have to have humility, and we just have to really all come together and say, you know what, I don't even want to have the credit. I just really want the industry to move forward. And that's what we that's what really what we did.
That's fabulous. Well, if there are producers listening, there's a couple different ways that you can kind of, if this is resonating with you and something that you want to learn more about, you can definitely visit Montana Stockgrowers website at mtbeef.org. Go to the producer profitability section, and there'll be more information on how you can sign on and join the Common Ground movement related to this topic. Um, we also will have a bit more of a deep dive with Turk and other folks at the Montana Stock Growers mid-year meeting, which is scheduled for the end of May in Butte, Montana. I'm so excited there. Kind of Turk, as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or anything that you would like our listeners to know as we kind of wrap up this conversation?
I think there's some philosophies that, I think we need to be brave to be able to work with people that maybe we don't always agree with. And, producers have such a strong voice. And we just need to encourage more producers to step forward and and be involved. I also think producers really need to be involved with organizations, and we need more. I guess I don't know a better way of seeing it, but real producers involved, and they need to work with their organizations and and say, hey, you know what? Let's also work with as many different organizations as possible, because this still comes down to influencing policy to really help our industry survive and be into the future. And so, um, I'm really big on your voice needs to be heard, and I really encourage you to do that. Also, the websites, Raylee, you talked about are good, but also if you know any of the participants involved in that, please reach out to them. They will be happy to visit with you. And if you ever want to be involved in maybe a summit in the future, reach out to those participants and say, "Hey, I'd like to be involved next time." And that's what this is all about, is to get people's voices heard. And so I really encourage that.
Excellent. Yeah, we will put all of those participants up on our website if folks want to listen. Turk, I also wanted to just extend a thank you to you for your leadership as kind of moderating this summit and helping pull it together. It's very meaningful for the industry, and I'm really excited on the future and where everything will go. I guess as we wrap up, I what one thing that stuck out to me was a summary paragraph that was part of the Common Ground Summit that I'll just leave us with. And it says, agriculture is not an option. America's food chain is only as strong as our family farms and ranches. Our livestock industry is better together, and we must unify with one voice. So we will end our interview with that. I think that sums up the really great conversation we had and the conversation that you guys had while in Denver. And thank you for your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you.